All set, Will? Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Greg Kehoe. I'm the U.S. Attorney for the Middle District of Florida. I'm here at the podium with the Acting Special Agent in charge of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, Cheryl Harrell. We'd like to bring to your attention a case that has been unsealed and there have been arrests. The case involves a transnational criminal organization operating between the United States and Canada for the past several years. The targets of this investigation were purchasing weapons here in Tampa and in South Florida, and were transporting those weapons to criminal gangs and groups in Canada. In less than a year, well over 106 firearms were illegally trafficked to Canadian criminals. These firearms have been recovered at homicides, shootings, and clandestine drug labs in Canada. They've also been involved in 3 homicides in Canada. In fact, one weapon purchased by the defendant Corbin was involved in a homicide in Canada approximately 31 days after Corbin purchased that weapon here in the Tampa area. The following charges are before you, and I think you have the indictment. It's a conspiracy to traffic firearms with all defendants, firearms trafficking and dealing in dealing in firearms without a license. The 4 defendants: Tyler Corbin is a Tampa resident. He was a Canadian citizen with permanent residency. He was a supplier of the firearms to this organization. The other supplier was Edward Noel. He's a Canadian citizen. He's currently in Canadian custody. He was likewise a purchaser and a supplier. The individual who was trafficking the weaponry to Canada was Alfredo Santana. He is likewise a U.S. citizen. He was arrested in Miami. The other defendant, Omar Singate, is a Canadian citizen. He is in custody in Canada. And the last defendant that you have before you in the indictment is Arif Juman. He is a Canadian citizen, and he is a fugitive as we speak. In addition to the firearms trafficking, Corbin himself is charged with the conspiracy to possess with intent to distribute fentanyl. The evidence will reflect during the course of this that weaponry was in fact paid for in several instances with narcotics. The U.S. Attorney's Office, of course, would like to thank the work of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms for their outstanding work in conjunction with the Homeland Security Investigations, HSI, and we'd also like to thank the Canadian Border Services Agency for helping in this matter. Let me be very clear to you, ladies and gentlemen, this investigation continues. It is far from over. We're going to get to the bottom of this trafficking organization, which is extensive, and our fellow neighbors to the front have suffered the brunt of that weaponry coming across the border, and we will, in conjunction with the Canadian authorities, obviously with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms at the lead, in conjunction with HSI, we will put an end to this. At this time, I'd like to bring up Acting Special Agent in charge, Cheryl Harrell, to discuss this matter a bit further. Cheryl, let me give you the podium.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Cheryl Harrell. I'm the Acting Special Agent in charge of ATF's Tampa Field Division. I'm proud to join U.S. Attorney Kehoe this afternoon. Today's announcement is a sneak peek into the complex story about a sophisticated transnational criminal organization that until recently fueled violent crime in Canada for sheer profit. The group's patterns of activity span from October of 2023 to June of 2024 and included purchasing and trafficking firearms and deadly drugs that were later linked to homicides, shootings, and clandestine drug labs across the border. Fortunately, this type of case falls squarely into ATF's mission. We find and arrest the worst of the criminals, including those who sponsor gun violence, and bring them to justice. We began investigating this 5-person enterprise in May of 2024 and have left no stone unturned. From Canada to Florida, where ATF arrested Alfredo Santana in Miami on December the 4th, and also Tyler Corbin in Tampa on December the 8th. From the beginning, ATF set out to achieve 3 objectives. First and foremost was to objectively follow the facts and intelligence wherever they led us. Second, we identified the group's hierarchy and prioritized criminal charges. Third, we deconstructed the enterprise's pattern of activities to obtain criminal charges, which are outlined in the July 2025 federal indictment. I won't reveal the operational details of this case because it's still active, but we can confirm that at least 29 illegally trafficked firearms have already been directly linked to crime scenes in Canada. The good news is that this transnational criminal organization is no longer in business in Canada or in the United States, and we're all much safer today because of it. The defendants named this afternoon face serious charges for fuel and violent crime, and thanks to the relentless determination of the men and women of ATF and our law enforcement partners, the Canada Border Services Agency, HSI's Fort Lauderdale Field Office, and of course our federal prosecutors. With that, I'll hand the podium back to U.S. Attorney Kehoe.
Thank you, Cheryl. One thing I overlooked is obviously the profit motive here. The profit motive is significant. For instance, just as an example, if you go to a federal firearms licensee, you can purchase a Glock hand pistol for approximately $500. It is being sold in the black market in Canada for $5,000. So the profit is quite enormous. The same is true with AR-15s and AK-47s. They're being sold up in Canada for approximately $10,000 a piece. So if anybody's looking for a reason why this is being done, that's the reason, because there's a lot of money involved. Any questions?
How much does this shine a light on the difficulty in preventing gun crime when the main things that authorities seem to deal with are A, stolen guns, and B, guns that can't be tracked through legitimate purchases?
Well, let's take that. These particular guns, for instance, the federal firearms licensees filled out multiple purchase forms, and that has greatly assisted in this investigation. So they did the right thing. These weapons were purchased for cash, in most instances in cash, and those forms were filled out. Now, that's when you go to an FFL. There is oftentimes a person-to-person sale that doesn't trigger a FFL licensee. So those are a bit more difficult to track, but we did track many of these weapons that were purchased by Corbin through the multiple sales purchase forms.
Can you describe what else this group was doing, how you found them, what they do here in town, that sort of thing?
Well, to be very frank with you, the weapon that was seized at a homicide scene in Canada we tracked it back, ATF tracked it back to a purchase by Corbin approximately 31 days before the homicide took place. That's what...
A legal purchase.
A legal purchase. A legal purchase that he made of that weapon was tracked back by ATF to Tampa, and that began the investigation. That began the investigation with ATF, HSI, and the Canadian authorities, where multiple weapons were seized at various crime locations. As we said, we have 29. We have reason to believe there are significantly more weapons involved here than the 100-plus that we know about. We think that it's well into 200, and as this goes on, we will, in fact, come up with more seizures. I'm confident of that. But that's how it happened. It started very small, came back to us, and we went from there.
You don't believe they're hooked into a larger organization, and this is only 5 guys. Is it just them running this ring?
Well, I mean, this is an organization that is involved in a variety of other things that the investigation, as it unfolds, will develop and is being developed by the Canadian authorities. This is just one small aspect of it, and that has to do with their firearms purchases. How does a criminal organization get firearms? They use a system such as this, where they're purchasing weapons and then smuggling them into Canada. So don't look at this organization as just those involved in firearms. I submit to you that it's going to be some more significant than that as this moves on.
So most of these folks could also face Canadian charges as well.
That's right. In matters in addition to firearms, there shouldn't be just a narrow scope that just is of firearms. This piece that we have here involving this weapon coming out of our backyard here involves firearms going to an organization in Canada that's involved in a multiple different aspects of activity.
I know you said that, this is far from being over this investigation. You all are going to get to the bottom of this. Anything that you can
We are going to continue to work with our our partners in Canada, ATF and HSI, and attempt to track down every weapon that this organization purchased and what happened to it. It's not sufficient that we know that it was just purchased. What happened to that weapon? And of course, we would like to try to find out what happened with that weaponry before we seize it at another crime scene. That doesn't help that we have but it helps the investigation. But what we would ultimately like to do is to seize weapons before they end up at a homicide scene. Unfortunately, in this case, it happened on 3 different occasions. So we try to prevent that as we move into the future. That's the goal. That's the goal. The last individual is yet to be arrested, Juman. Juman. He's a Canadian citizen as well. He's wanted in Canada on other issues. So we just don't have a handle on him right now. He's not in custody, I will tell you that.
Could he be in the U.S. or is it in
I mean, I would be remiss if I even attempted to answer that question because I just don't know.
If I could ask, a couple weeks ago, we were here and we did a press conference announcing the arrest of several suspects who were trafficking AI computer chips.
Yes.
This week, the president made sales like that legal to China. You spoke very passionately about the need to keep that technology out of Chinese hands. A, are you surprised by what the president did? And B, do you have any reaction to the president doing this? And does it jeopardize your investigation?
I'm not conversant for what was actually sold. The key to that particular sale was the disclosure. AI technology falls into multiple different categories. What is the license for? And when you have a license, who is it going to? The case that we had here were pieces of AI equipment that were going into an AI technology to facilitate potential weapons development. Then they were making those sales through Thailand and the Philippines. That's a much different situation. When you go in and you get a license from the Department of Commerce, or whomever you're getting that license from, DOD possibly, and then you're disclosing we are selling X, Y, and Z to those folks. That's a much different thing. The technology that was being sold or being pilfered and sold indirectly to the People's Republic of China was never disclosed, and the forms that were used, the licenses that were obtained, were false and not disclosed. Now, I will tell you that the United States does not sell every piece of AI equipment to anybody that wants it throughout the world. I can tell you that confidently, and that is why it's important to kind of pinpoint what feature of AI is being sold. So it's difficult to just say with a broad brush. Yes.
You're comfortable with that?
Oh, I'm not saying I'm comfortable with it. I'm saying that I don't know enough about the individual facts of that sale in order to give you a fulsome answer. And I don't want to mislead you and say, oh, I'm comfortable with this and I'm comfortable with that, when I'm not sure exactly what was being sold. Clearly, the authorities in the United States made a decision that whatever was sold was appropriate. Sir.
Can you give us more details on the weapons that were actually trafficked? You said an AK-47 at one point, but
They were Glocks mostly. The vast majority of them were handguns. A Glock is a very, very desirable weapon, very expensive. It's one that is very desirable among organizations. There were AK-47s, AR-15s as well. Not as many as Glocks, but I would say, if we look at the 100-plus breakdown, 75, maybe 80% are handguns, the rest are long guns.
what about this weapon that was used in that homicide that Corbin bought here in Tampa and used? Can you give me details on that particular weapon?
I think that was a handgun, was it not? Yeah, Cheryl informs me it was a handgun.
Was Corbin the only individual in this organization purchasing firearms?
No, as I think I noted before, and the other purchaser, the other supplier was Edward Noel. Those two were the ones that were involved in the purchase. And Santana was one of the, thank you, was one of the individuals that was moving it up to Canada.
And do we know, do you guys have records since they were purchasing legally about how many firearms are registered to each individual?
The breakdown of that number I don't have at this point. I would say that of the ones we have, for instance, the 100+ that we named in indictment, the vast majority of those were made by Corbin purchases. That being said, Noel made purchases as well.
And were they legally being taken over the border going through, I would figure they would have to claim that as they crossed into Canada. Were they doing it legally like that, or were they kind of smuggling it throughout, going without going?
The indications are that they're smuggling it. They're engaging the activities of a federal firearms licensee, which they are not. They're trafficking in those firearms, and they are acting like a dealer. So, no, they were smuggling it into Canada.
Do you have details of the homicide itself? Who was killed? Who did the shooting?
I do not.
What happened?
With all due respect, I do not. I don't have the details on the Canadian homicide. Do you have? No.
And then can you just describe as best you can, you may not be able to at all, but how you found this group, what sort of tip led you to them?
Well, it started with a particular homicide that we will look back at where this gun came from, what was going on. We had the multiple sales reports coming in, and it took some time to piece together who was involved in this. Then, of course, without going into operational details, there were search warrants that were executed on communication devices, which I'm sure you can imagine. We started to get some communication. It went from there. It wasn't something that just happened overnight. And throughout it all, we continued to stay in contact on ATF, stay in contact with our friends in Canada to get the additional information and other weaponry. So this was all going on at the same time, but it did take a significant amount of time. It's, in fact, a couple of years.
In the U.S., would these guns have been worth much less than they are in Canada, just given the difference in availability of firearms?
Well, I mean, if you can purchase a weapon and go into a federal firearms licensee and buy a Glock, you can get it for significantly less than what $5,000 as is being sold in Canada. I'm not really conversant on what the pricing is for all Glock weaponry. I know there is a scale depending on the caliber, but yeah, you can. They made significant amount of money to doing it up there, which is the reason why they were doing it.
What did Mr. Corbin do before he got involved?
That's a good question.
Was this all he was doing?
He had
Anything like that?
well, he had no visible means of support, is what I can tell you.
Do you have any sense of how these 5 folks came together and started working together?
Well, part of that is operational at this point, and I just can't get into how they became associates. I can just tell you they were.
And just this is also just kind of a clarifying question. You say these crimes happened between October of 23 and June of 24. Can you explain kind of why the indictment took an additional 13 months? Was that because arrests were beginning to be made in June of 24? Why did they stop trafficking then?
Well, let me stop you right there. Number one, this investigation hasn't stopped, so I'm not saying they stopped prior to their arrest, but this is what our investigation developed, and the decision was made in conjunction with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms that this has to end, and we have to make an arrest and obviously take these people off the street from doing what they're doing.
Did you get a sense that they were on deal, that they knew that they were being investigated, or were there changes in their behavior or their activity?
I can't answer that question. I can't answer that question, and part of it is I just don't know. Anybody that's involved in a criminal organization who is careful is always changing their MO, and they're always changing how they're doing business. Now, I don't. That may just come from the fact that people are in that business and change because you don't want to have habits there that are being tracked by law enforcement, or whether or not they were onto something. We don't have any indications that they were all onto something right away.
Are they involved in trafficking guns that are winding up in the hands of criminals in the U.S.? Have they been linked to any local cases?
The only guns that we have found of the 29 that we've tracked back here are guns that were seized in Canada. That's not to say that they might not develop. I'm just telling you what we know right now. 29 were in crimes in Canada. That was seized by law enforcement in Canada.
Do you think that's just because it's more lucrative, just because they can get much more money for a gun in Canada than they could in the United States?
You know, I don't know, I guess it's all about what the market can bear. If in fact you can go into a federal firearms licensee here and buy a Glock at significantly less, and it's a bit more difficult in Canada, that profit motive makes it, incentivizes they're bringing those guns across the border for sale. That was the incentive.
Needing the money.
Well, of course. I mean, if you're buying a weapon, buying a handgun for $500 and you're selling it for $5,000, that's a significant markup. Any other questions, folks? Thank you very much. Have a good day. If we don't talk again, I think we probably will talk again. But if we don't, have a good holiday. Take care.